Whilst we recognize our landfills all are swelling with the waste, it doesn't justify a bad decision made in haste. Let us put our heads together so the problem may be faced, and we must do it now. We don't want incineration. We know there's a better way. Okay, whilst we're waiting, I want to give you some incredibly exciting news. Italy has some of the best waste practices and some of the worst. And the worst practices, as you all know, are focused in Naples. I've been with Rossano to Naples at least 10 times. And the politicians never listen to us. And my joke is that the people in Naples have a waste problem because they have no fingers. They can't separate. But the politicians won't listen. Now, over the last couple of years, we've developed a strategy of trying to get all the little towns around Naples to declare zero waste. And I think we're up to about a dozen or more around Naples. Now the exciting news. The new mayor recently elected for Naples and the vice mayor are for zero waste. In fact, the vice mayor was involved in the zero waste campaign. So that's exciting. Okay, now to the talk. Do go to this website, AmericanHealthStudies.org, and there you will find a series of videotapes called On the Road to Zero Waste. Historically, I think you'll find them interesting. Nova Scotia, Burlington, Vermont, great reuse, repair, deconstruction. Canberra, Australia, which was the first jurisdiction to actually use the words no waste, not zero waste, but no waste. And then finally, the San Francisco program. But before those videotapes were made, in 1998, Bill Sheehan invited me to come to the recycling conference in San Francisco, the CRRA conference. And there he wanted me to interview all the movers and shakers on zero waste. And we did that, and we produced a 60-minute video which was called Zero Waste, a Realistic Goal, Idealistic Dream, or Realistic Goal. And many of those people are in this audience today. So that was exciting. And if you want to have some fun, go to another videotape, which is also on the homepage, which was made in 1988, called Waste Management as If the Future Mattered. Okay. So 10 steps to zero waste. This is all very familiar to you, and I will be focusing on one of those steps today. So we're talking about source separation, door-to-door collection in Italy, porta a porta. Composting, yes, I agree. Composting is actually more important than recycling. We should put that first. Reuse, repair, and community center. The model there is Dan Knapp, Urban Ore. But these can reinvent the villages in the big cities. They help to fight the anonymity of living in a big city. This is where you're going to find the exciting people in town. Waste reduction initiatives, you heard some of those from Rossano. There are many examples. We should be having a directory. We need a directory of best practices in zero waste. We need a directory of good examples of waste reduction and all these other things. Economic incentives, the pay-by-bag system, or the save-as-you-throw system. It can be negative, it can be a positive stimulus. Rossano mentioned that in Italy, they've gone from 70% to 85%. Also in Ercibel, Spain, is up to 86% diversion by adding on the pay-by-bag system at the end. Then the residual separation and research center. Industrial responsibility, we have to move the issue from the back end to the front end. And yes, in this separation facility, there's going to be stuff left over, the non-recyclables, and the dirty organic fraction that has to be stabilized before it goes underground. And we hope that by 2020, we are darn close to zero waste. So those are the 10 steps. Very practical, cost-effective, fairly simple, politically acceptable. Okay, now I want to focus on step 8 here. The key step to zero waste. Why is it the key step? This residual separation and research facility, for which there is not yet an example on the planet, even though I've been talking about it for a few years, but hopefully somebody will listen. The residual separation research facility is built at the entrance to the landfill. No material can enter the landfill without it being separated and screened. More material can be recycled. We know that. We've heard about facilities today where they're doing just that from the residual fraction. The toxics can be removed and identified, and they need to be removed and identified. And the dirty organic fraction can be biologically stabilized to minimize the impacts once they're put into the ground. And finally, the non-recyclable materials can be studied. It deliberately adds a feedback mechanism to the production waste system. The thing about nature makes no waste. And the reason that nature makes no waste is she is fabulous with feedback mechanisms. As a biochemist, trained as a biochemist, we know that if a body produces a substance X, too much of it, that substance will switch off the process that's generating it. That's called a feedback mechanism. We have a waste problem in the world because we refuse to use feedback mechanisms. This residual screening and research facility is a deliberate attempt to introduce a feedback mechanism. Now, we have half of this operating in Nova Scotia. In front of their landfills in Nova Scotia, they have a residual screening facility where the residuals in plastic bags, the bags are open, they go into long conveyor belts, more recyclables are pulled out, more toxics. The dirty organic fraction, the kitty litter diapers, not touched. They go to the end of the conveyor belt, they're shredded, and go to a second composting operation. Not to produce a product to sell, but to stabilize it so when it goes into the landfill. And that landfill, which I visited, didn't smell. And the best clue, well, there were no birds. You didn't see any seagulls there, which is quite extraordinary. Now, what I would like to see introduced here is a research facility, so that in this facility, the non-recyclable fraction would be studied, would be examined. And this is where I think we should involve the local universities or technical colleges. First of all, you would maximize the capture rate. For example, if you found kitchen waste in the residual fraction, then clearly you've got to educate the people better because some people are putting it in the wrong container. A directory of best practices. And my dream would be to have this on the internet and wherever possible coupled, linked to videotapes. And I urge you, if you're doing anything unusual, anything creative, please put it onto videotape so the whole world can learn from it. We don't all have to reinvent the wheel. There may be a possibility for finding local uses for some materials. Shredded newspapers can be used for insulation, cattle bedding, and so on. Recommend better industrial design. This is the key. You've heard from Rossano about some of the things that they're doing in Capanari. And then research for clean production. So I'm put in a role here for chemistry professors. So they should be identifying some of the toxics in those products and trying to design batteries without using toxics and so on. A key issue is designing batteries without toxics. So the message to industry is very simple but very important. If we can't reuse it, recycle it, or compost it, you shouldn't be making it, period. We need better industrial design for the 21st century. As Gary often says, waste is a design problem, and that's where we need to tackle this. Why is the residual separation research facility the key step to zero waste? Well, one, it's the nexus between community responsibility, which we know we can get. We're getting it in Canada, we're getting it in California, we're getting it in Italy, Belgium, and many other places. We know we can get that. But what is tough to get is the industrial responsibility, especially for the packaging industry. So we need to use one to drive the other.